On today's World Insight, a leg up for Chinese consumer spending and businesses with a raft of top incentives from tax cuts to greater ease of buying electric vehicles and homes. Could they help keep the momentum of recovery going?
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. China rolled out on Monday a raft of incentives to raise consumer spending on a wide range of goods and services. Data shows a steady recovery of China's domestic consumption in the first half of the year. Retail sales rose more than 8% year-on-year and contributed over 77% to economic growth. The incentives were unveiled amid global headwinds, a sign of rough sailing in months ahead. World economic growth is forecast to drop to 2.1% in the year 2023, a full percentage point less than in 2022, according to the June report of the World Bank's Global Economic Prospects. Although the U.S. economy expanded with a robust 2.4% in the second quarter, that did little to stop Fitch Ratings from lowering U.S. debt grade by a notch from the highest AAA to AA+. For China, despite the challenges, its GDP grew 5.5% year-on-year in the first half of 2023. So where is Chinese economy now? Whether the new incentives will work to spur more growth in China? And where is the Chinese economy heading for? What is still needed? To answer all of these questions, let's loop in our panelists. For more on the Chinese economy, in Singapore, Jim Rogers, chairman at Rogers Holding; in Hong Kong, Hong Hao, chief economist at the Grow Investment Group; and in Beijing, Chu Qiang, research fellow from the Global Issues at the Beijing Foreign Studies University. Wonderful to see all of you gentlemen. Now, about the Chinese economy, real estate is pretty much on top of the discussion list. Now, Mr. Hong, your assessment about the latest policies regarding nurturing real estate market in China?
Yeah, well, I think since the beginning, since late last year, there was a flurry of stimulus policy, trying to bring the property sector back to life. But unfortunately, I think we had a really good, strong first quarter sales, but then going into second quarter, things start slow again. I think even for the latest sales number, we are down year-on-year by about 30%, on a very low base from last year. So it is concerning, but then at the same time, because this year across the board, property prices, inflation has been very weak, and the Chinese residents, have this habit of buying properties when prices going up, not down. So I think it's time to shore up some confidence and bring people back to the markets.
Interesting. Time to show confidence. How?
I think late last week, there was a policy from the PBOC, directing the commercial banks to lower their interest rate on the existing mortgage. So, by doing so, I think it actually lessened, the burden of the households who has already bought a house. And then at the same time, before this, there was a PBOC guidance, to lower interest rate on the new mortgage as well, right? So to make it cheaper for people to buy homes. And then across cities, we're seeing removal of restrictions on, how many properties you can buy for one household, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, the policies would take time to show some their effects. But I think for now, we are expecting even more policies to come, given the very weak sales in June.
Remind us, Mr. Chu, why real estate market is so important as an indicator of the Chinese economy. There were times talking about the higher quality growth, in which real estate is not necessarily going to be mostly encouraged. But now at this moment, we are seeing some policy changes, at least temporarily. How should we understand all of this at this point?
Well, I think the real estate market is always one of the most important pillars in Chinese economy. And on a macro level, if I take a look at the fiscal income of the local government, this is actually very important to share a pie in this pocket. So it means we will have a very stable fiscal income and expanding in China, investment is very important, so government spending is also very important. The real estate market, in the healthy status, actually guaranteed that. And secondly, in a micro level, actually for the household, we have many of the research papers already for the household, for the families. Actually, the stable and upgoing house prices actually affecting people's confidence, not only in China, everywhere in America, Japan, in Korea, in Germany. So when your house price is stable and going up a little bit every year, so people will have a good confidence and expectation of people will keep on spending the money and keep on borrowing the money, and which keeps financial sizes in the market to keep on growing. And also, even in America, in Germany, in those matured market, real estate already still played a very important pillar of their economy. So I think Chinese government understand that and then pull off all these policies.
On the one hand, to revive the growth rate of the economy, make sure the local government have a stable income to support the local economy. All these are importantly linked to the real estate. However, on the other hand, there is going to be a higher quality growth trend. That's at least is the goal. Mr. Rogers, how do you see China is taking actions to make this a delicate balance?
Well, China's had one of the greatest real estate booms and maybe even a bubble that the world has ever seen. And it's having an effect that's going to take a long time for the bubble to work its way out. It was so huge. It was gigantic. I'm afraid it's going to take a long time for this bubble to correct itself. It will, don't worry. All bubbles eventually correct themselves, but it's one of the reasons that the Chinese economy is slow.
What is likely to be the priority that could, lead the other factors to the direction of a rebound? That has been discussed about the Chinese economy for quite some time. Now, even though we are not having the clearest picture, what do you think at this point?
Yeah, I think back in 2021, the property sales in China was 18 trillion yuan. So that is the peak of the Chinese property market. And many of us, regarded, 18 trillion yuan as a almost unsurmountable number for the next couple of years, right? So even if we do recover this year from a very low base, we're not expecting to see, anything more than 12 trillion yuan this year. So I think last year we did like around 10 trillion yuan. So, if this year property sales does come back, then in the second half of the year, we'll be lucky, to make the 10 trillion yuan property sales this year. So it is a long way, from 2021. But having said all that, I think in the first quarter this year, property sales in general has been quite strong, and many of us, was hoping that the momentum of the first quarter will carry on to the onward to the rest of the year, but it didn't happen. All right, so I think right now, if you look at the Chinese macro system, excess savings in the banking system is very, very high. For the first half of the year, we saved more than 10 trillion RMB in bank deposits. All right, so we need to get those liquidity moving, or at least to get people to spend some of the money to save less hard, to consume or to even buy a property. So it takes a lot of work. So right now, just now we discussed some interest rate cut policy, removal of buying restrictions, and I think all in all, we need to shore up the confidence in the property market, for people to start buying again.
Chinese government trying to take other measures, for example, social measures, in order to encourage more people to buy housing in the urban areas, such as trying to provide more access of residents membership, shall I say, in the cities for those population that were not at this point. So how do you see these policy changes likely to change the consumption structure of the Chinese economy at this point, including, of course, the real estate?
A lot of people really have lots of the space to upgrade their housing conditions, no matter in areas per capita or in the quality of their living. actually the government really want to channel the funding and channel people's expectation to that kind of market. Let everybody have a decent housing, and that can create healthy housing market. And also, but before that, you need to provide people a good expectation for jobs, for the future incomes. So if we can achieve that, we will have a good circle in the future. So this is what government want to do. And also take a look at the interest rate of China. Our mortgage rate is still one of the highest among all the industrial countries, comparing to Japan, America, and etc. At least 1 year ago. So I think China still can provide some good conditions for the mid-income family and low-income family to change their condition in housing, and by meanwhile to improve our economy. But this is step two. We still need to solve the step one question. That is, how can we restore the confidence in the job market and income?
Do you agree with that, Mr. Hong? Many more tools still in the box?
Yeah, well, I think Dr. Chu was discussing about the living quality improvement. And right now, the average living space for a Chinese person is about 35 square meters, right? So there's obviously room for improvement. For example, people in the US, it's like, close to 60. And besides that, as Dr. Chi pointed out, in many of the urban centers, they're like shanty town, right? So, very low quality housing for low income people. And I think there was a policy already rolled out, to reconstruct, to redevelop the urban center, many of the shantytown area into a higher living quality space for people. So I think that alone, right? So we started doing that since 2017, 2018, around then. And back then we did 6 million units per year, right? So I think since the pandemic, because a lot of the resources has been redirected, to do, other things, for example, healthcare, then therefore, there's not enough money left, to redevelop these shanty towns. So I think since 2019, we did like 1 million units a year, right? So it's a far cry from the peak level of 6 million. So I think this year, we will start doing it again, right? So to provide better living quality for people still living in the shanty town, even though they're in an urban center.
Mr. Rogers, real estate is only one of those indicators that many are looking at when it comes to the Chinese economy. When you are looking at the overall picture of the Chinese economy, how should we understand the resilience, the efficiency, and also the priorities of a possible rebound?
Yeah, China still has many restrictions. I'm a foreigner. I could not just come into Shanghai or somewhere and buy a place. There are many restrictions and many complications. If I were China, and I'm not China, I cannot tell China what to do, but I would open the market to anybody and everybody, and I would let money flow in and out of China if people wanted to, because then there would be a lot more demand from people like me who would love to buy a place in China. That would help.
After the pandemic of 3 years, many believe there's likely to be a natural rebound of the Chinese economy. It happened to a certain extent, but not necessarily to the extent that many would love to see and excited to see. So how would you assess where we are looking at the energy within the Chinese economy?
I think going into the second quarter, the GDP in China grew about 6.3%, right? So, but it is still below expectation, because last year the base for comparison is very low. I think, for this year, around 80% of the GDP growth is actually coming from consumption. So I think, the recovery is in place, but, the momentum is slowing, and that is why we need more policies, to bring the recovery back on track. So I think right now, as we speak, there are like many different government departments having a press conference, trying to coordinate, how to roll out more policy. For example, the PBOC may cut RRR and also interest rate again. The Ministry of Finance may reduce tax burden for people. And I think, for the Ministry of Construction, they may roll out detailed plans about how to do the shantytown construction. So, we're looking forward to more details. I think right now we're seeing a lot of press communications between the government and the market. And I think going forward, we would love to see more details on many of the policies.
What do you think might be encouraging for people to take out their money and try to spend it to the extent that they feel comfortable?
Chinese people are hardworking people, and they are a bit conservative people because they always save for the rainy days. So I think most important thing, one is to build the stable expectation for their future income, which is a stable job, stable cash income, so they can build up the cash flow and restore their balance sheet in the family. And secondly, is there long stored, assets, for example, like houses or the preservable stock. And if you can provide them that, and they don't need any stimulus package. They can just pull out the money and spend it like hell. And also, I think temporarily, if you cannot solve this problem and give them some cash subsidies can be good. I'm not quite a fan for the food coupon, but I think cash, subsidies can really, endorse more of the diversity in spending and, vitalize the whole market. It can be very effective.
I think more open up, more removal of all sorts of restrictions on, how people spend the money, buy houses, for example, or conversion of currencies. And I think many of these policies are in place. We're moving towards the right direction, right? So this year, much of the communications emphasize on, how to open the economy further for development, and also welcoming, foreign investors to come back to China. So I think many good policies are already in place. We're moving towards the right direction. But I think, we will look forward to, even faster implementation of many of the policies.
Mr. Hong, reminds me of recent decades during China's process of reform and opening up. There were times that the economy were, shall I say, becoming the growth rate has becoming quite interesting from time to time. There were skyrocketing time. There were also slowing down time. There were sensitive period of history in which also, there were times in which other issues would have an impact on the overall reality of the Chinese economy and people's enthusiasm about Chinese economy, both inside China and overseas. So would those moments of any food for thoughts for us now, or they're not relevant at all?
Well, I think China has come a long way, right? So since 2001, China joined the WTO till now. I think the size of the economy has grown many times. Now we are 120 trillion yuan economy, right? So it's the second largest economy in the world. So once you get into this kind of size, growth rate start to slow. So and I think that is the reason why we're setting 5% growth target for this year. And I think even at 5%, we're talking about the economy growing at a rate each year you're growing another the economy of UK plus many other economies in size. So it's very substantial. So I think 5% for this year is achievable. And also since 2013, the volatility of the economy has substantially lower. So it's been about 7%, 7 to 6%, and then 5%. So we are on a step down, and the growth rate is slowing down. It's primarily because the size of the economy is now 120 trillion yuan.
Now, China is walking a dual, shall I say, track plan. One is, of course, further opening up and reform to the international partners. The other is more developing its internal market and make sure there will be sufficient flow of goods, products, innovation, and things go on. So how do you see these approaches? At this point, what is likely to be the one that could work for China?
Well, I think this is a must step that we have to go. Remember when America became the number one economy in the whole world, actually has done the same thing. One is unified the national market, and secondly is the peak or commanding heights of the technology. And these are the two most decisive factors to decide whether China can achieve this due track of our economy and expand the domestic market. When the economy grow as large as China, it's impossible for it only by relying on the outside market. It has to rely on its own self, like America used to do, like England used to do. And America used to experience that, in the 1940s and 60s, and they have done that to become the number one economy in the whole world. And right now it's China's turn. So if China can actually unite the whole Chinese market, and also when China can seize a certain commanding height in the manufacturing sector, like Germany, like South Korea, like America used to do, I think this is actually very, very doable. And also considering China still have the largest growing middle income class in the whole world, and also China only have less than 30% of the urbanization rate. So I say the potential is still here. And also, I would like to mention a little bit, like two of my coworkers I just mentioned, we still have lots of hope. Remember, in 1998, 1999, that's much worse than here right now. And the only difference at that time, we have seen the bankruptcy of the SOE, we have seen the huge flood. But at that time, the only difference, we don't have social media, so people feel better about it. But see what we've been doing right now. And second thing is that take a look at Japan. Everybody says bad things about Japan's economy. Let me tell you one fact. This year, the birth rate for Japan is been reversed. And that, if that is reversible, I think many bad moments can be, overcome. And China will have its good moment later. And you're going to be confident about that.
China can, borrow, learn a lot of things from, how foreign countries deal with so-called recession. But I think for the Chinese economy, the so-called recession really is a slowdown in growth rate. So I think, for such a big country, I think, 5% seems to be achievable for this year. But even so, it represents a substantial slowdown, from the 10% per year GDP growth, back in the good old days. So I think, there's still a lot of work needs to be done. But I think 5% for this year is achievable.
In retrospect, how shall we understand when the growth rate has been facing challenges as a result of complex woven of factors? How should we understand the reason, the logic behind the possible rebound? How much patience should we have for a possible rebound? And how efficient policies, communications of policies, and the implementations of policies need to be in order to guarantee a rebound? Mr. Hong.
Yeah, it's challenging, and to be very honest, because this year investment growth has been slowing down, right? So, and also, because of the developers not having enough cash to buy land and also build buildings. And I think that's the reason why, investment growth has been a huge drag on this year's GDP growth. So I think, it is not easy task. I think for this year, we can still use the good old property investment to pump up investment growth in the property sector. But I think that the challenge really is after this year. So after we achieve the 5% growth target, right? So in the longer run, we still need to implement structural reform. We need to, for example, in terms of the share of GDP, let people's income, as a share of GDP becomes higher than before. And so that would encourage people to spend money. So we need to reduce the reliance of the economy on property investments. And also we need to deal with, the property bubble, after this year. So I think this year, the policy focus is really to stabilize the economy, right? So to bring it back onto the right track so that it sets the stage for further future reform down the road.
Right. Mr. Chu.
Well, I think why 5% of the GDP grows? Actually, 5% of the GDP growth means we can guarantee a new increase, 10 million job increase. That's what we need for the graduate this year. But it depends on which 5% you grow at. If you're depending on SOEs, probably you're going to need 6% of the growth. You can guarantee 10 million of the job increase. But if you depend on the private sector alone, probably you put money in the private sector's very efficiency can grow, make sure that 4% of the growth can guarantee the same amount of the job increase. So that's a reason why I think the government is mentioned too much about helping the private sector and what they're doing right now. So I think in order to make sure that we can still grow in a high speed and efficient way, I think helping the private sector is the key. And this goes without saying.
Mr. Rogers.
Well, Conway, there is no question that if China has 5%, it's going to be one of the best in the world. I mean, America would love to have 5%. Many countries would love to have 5%. I'm afraid it's going to be much worse in China because the world is going to have problems. And so China should be prepared for some difficult times in the future. It's not the end of the world. Every country has had it. America had many recessions as it rose to become a successful nation. So China will too. But somebody has to understand that we may have very difficult times in the world, including China. And the solution, in my view, is to continue to open up more and more and more, whether it's agriculture or property or whatever it is. Let China become open. Open the windows. Continue to open the windows.
Jim Rogers, Hong Hao, Chi Chiang. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. And that's all the time we have for today. You can always find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of my team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now. Have a good weekend.